The chamber was vast, an architectural marvel designed to intimidate. The ceiling arched high above, lit by floating orbs that pulsed in time with the council's deliberations. Hundreds of species occupied their designated platforms, murmuring in hushed voices as the human delegation took its place at the center. Captain Elias Voss stood with his hands clasped behind his back, surveying the assembled aliens with the measured gaze of a man who had seen his share of battlefields. Unlike the robed diplomats and ceremonial officials around him, he wore the sharp, dark uniform of the United Nations Stellar Command. His presence alone was a statement. Humanity had sent a soldier, not a politician. At the highest podium, High Chancellor Zaltor loomed, his elongated form draped in official regalia. His voice carried the weight of authority as he addressed the chamber. Captain Voss, humanity's expansion has become a growing concern for this council. Your species disregards established protocols, constructs warships at an alarming rate, and colonizes without proper authorization. These actions disrupt the delicate balance we have maintained for millennia. Voss raised an eyebrow, his expression caught between amusement and disbelief. Balance, he echoed. You mean stagnation? A ripple of murmurs spread through the assembly. Zaltor's gaze hardened, but he pressed on. The council has convened to issue final terms. Effective immediately, humanity must adhere to the following conditions. First, the reduction of your fleet to 1/10 of its current strength. Second, the immediate suspension of all independent research into artificial intelligence and military technology. Third, a full cessation of your unauthorized colonization efforts. In return, you will receive limited trade rights and a monitored presence within the council. Voss let the silence stretch, ensuring every representative had time to absorb the sheer absurdity of what had just been said. Then, with deliberate care, he leaned slightly forward. "Let me see if I understand," he said, his tone almost conversational. "You want us to disarm, abandon our scientific progress, and beg for permission to settle unclaimed worlds?" Zaltor inclined his head. "For the greater stability of the galaxy, yes." Voss exhaled a quiet chuckle, shaking his head. "And if we refuse?" The Chancellor's voice grew sharper. "Then the Council will take necessary measures. Embargoes. Sanctions. If required, military intervention." At that, Voss grinned. Not the expression of a man cowed by a superior force, but of someone who had just been told an exceptionally amusing joke. "You're serious," he said, as if testing the idea aloud. "You think you can enforce this?" A reptilian delegate from the far side of the chamber hissed in response. "We have stood as the governing body of the galaxy for 10,000 cycles. You are but a young, reckless species, barely removed from your homeworld. Your defiance is a danger to all." Voss turned toward the speaker, his expression cooling. "Reckless? Maybe. But tell me this, how many of your fleets were built in the last 50 years? The alien blinked, caught off guard. Voss pressed on, addressing the chamber at large. "I'll tell you. None. Because you don't innovate anymore. You don't build, you regulate. You don't explore, you manage. We, on the other hand, have done more in 3 centuries than most of you have in millennia. And now, because we refuse to be leashed, you threaten us." Zaltor's voice was heavy with authority. "We maintain order. Without our guidance, countless species would have fallen into chaos." "Chaos?" Voss shook his head. "No. You fear change. You fear competition. And you fear us." The chamber darkened for a moment as the holographic projection of humanity's fleet materialized in the center of the hall. Towering dreadnoughts, heavily armed destroyers, and sleek, AI-assisted cruisers hovered in perfect formation. The sheer scale of human military advancement was on full display. Voss gestured at the projection. 300 years ago, we had barely left our own solar system. Today, we stand here, not as subjects, but as equals. You demand we dismantle this fleet while your own member species keep armadas twice as large. A large, cephalopod-like delegate rumbled. Those fleets maintain stability. Voss snorted. "Convenient, isn't it? The old guard keeps its weapons, but the newcomers must stay weak. He let his gaze sweep across the chamber. Humanity will not disarm. We will not submit. And we will not ask permission to exist. The tension in the room thickened, the weight of an impending confrontation pressing down on every being present. Zaltor's expression remained carefully neutral, but the tightening of his fingers against the podium gave away his frustration. "Then you leave us no choice," the Chancellor declared. "You will be considered in violation of interstellar law." Voss met his gaze, utterly unshaken. "We've been called outlaws before." A low, uneasy murmur spread through the chamber. This was not the reaction the Council had expected. They had anticipated resistance, but not outright defiance. Zaltor composed himself, his voice returning to measured diplomacy. "Consider carefully, Captain. If you defy us, you will be isolated. Trade will cease. Resources will dwindle. Your colonies will struggle." Voss exhaled slowly, then nodded. "I hear you." For a brief moment, hope flickered in Zaltor's expression. Then Voss smiled. "And I'm telling you, try it." The chamber erupted. Some delegates hissed in outrage. Others whispered in hurried discussions. A few, including representatives of younger civilizations, exchanged knowing glances. Humanity wasn't backing down, and that meant the old balance of power was shifting. Zaltor straightened, regaining his composure. "Then prepare for the consequences, Captain." Voss took a step back, adjusting his uniform. "We already have." With that, he turned on his heel and strode out, leaving the Council in turmoil. The moment he exited, he tapped a discreet communicator on his wrist. "Commander," he said, his voice calm, "bring the ironclad into high orbit. It's time they see exactly what they're dealing with." The Galactic Council Central Station floated in the void, a sprawling construct of silver spires and glowing conduits. It had existed for millennia, a symbol of control, diplomacy, and order. Today, for the first time in centuries, that order was about to be shaken. Captain Elias Voss stood on the bridge of the UNS Ironclad, hands clasped behind his back as the massive dreadnought emerged from FTL into high orbit above the station. The ship's reinforced hull gleamed under the distant light of the system's twin suns, its sheer size making even the station's defensive platforms look inadequate. "Status report," Voss commanded. Commander Rachel Iwata, his second-in-command, barely glanced at her console before responding. "Weapons on standby, shields at full. We're being scanned by at least 40 different systems, but no signs of an active lock." Voss smirked. "They're nervous." "More than nervous," Iwata replied. She rotated her screen, showing a data feed from the Council's security network. "We intercepted their internal chatter. They expected a diplomatic ship. Instead, we brought a fortress." The Ironclad wasn't just a warship, it was the single most advanced vessel humanity had ever constructed. A kilometer long, layered with adaptive armor, and equipped with AI-assisted weaponry, it had been built with one principle in mind: deterrence. And now, that deterrence was working. A chime echoed across the bridge. "Incoming transmission from the station," Iwata reported. "High Chancellor Zaltor himself." Voss exhaled slowly. "Let's not keep him waiting." The main display flickered, revealing the Chancellor's elongated, blue-skinned face. His usual composure had cracked, just slightly, eyes narrower, hands gripping the ceremonial staff at his side. "Captain Voss," Zaltor said, voice measured, "your arrival with a fully armed dreadnought is an act of aggression. This is a diplomatic station, not a battlefield." Voss tilted his head. "Then why do you have a fleet?" Zaltor's expression barely shifted. "For security." "Ah." Voss gave a slow nod. "Then you already understand why we brought ours." The chamber behind Zaltor buzzed with activity, advisors whispering, representatives exchanging hurried glances. The Chancellor wasn't used to being challenged so openly. "You are in violation of our protocols," Zaltor pressed. "This vessel must stand down and submit to inspection immediately." Voss let the silence stretch before replying. "No. A few heartbeats passed. Zaltor straightened. Then we will be forced to. You'll what? Voss interrupted. Open fire? Let's be honest, Chancellor. The only reason this conversation is still happening is because you don't know if you'd win. Another silence. This time, heavier. Zaltor's jaw tightened. Captain Voss, we do not resolve matters through intimidation. Voss chuckled. That's rich, coming from a council that just threatened sanctions, embargoes, and military intervention. Zaltor's advisors murmured again. He silenced them with a sharp gesture. Your presence here destabilizes the balance we have maintained for generations, he said. Leave. Now. Voss glanced at Iwata. She gave a slight nod. Sensor data confirmed that several ships were repositioning near the station's outer perimeter, likely preparing for a confrontation. Nothing overt yet, but tensions were rising. Voss returned his attention to the Chancellor. No, he said again, this time slower. We're not going anywhere. But if it helps, we're not here to start a fight. We're here to remind you that you don't get to dictate humanity's future. Zaltor's face darkened. Then you are making a grave mistake. Voss leaned forward slightly. Are we? Let's find out. He gestured toward his communications officer, who immediately relayed the command. Outside, the ironclad's main engines fired, nudging the massive vessel into a slow, deliberate maneuver. The ship drifted downward, placing itself directly above the station in a position of undeniable dominance. The message was clear. A flurry of alerts scrolled across Iwata's display. Multiple ships locking targeting systems on us, she reported. They're testing our response. Voss exhaled. Open a channel to all vessels in the system. A second later, his voice echoed through every bridge and control room in range. This is Captain Elias Voss of the UNS Ironclad. We are here to ensure humanity's independence is respected. Any action taken against this vessel will be considered an act of war. No threats. No bluster. Just a statement of fact. Silence followed. A long, tense silence. Then a response, though not from the Council's warships. A different signal cut through the frequencies. This is Commander Genval of the Taraxi Republic, an alien voice announced. I propose that the Council reconsider its position. Humanity has earned its place here, whether you acknowledge it or not. Another voice followed. This is Representative Kaltor of the Valari Dominion. We have long questioned the Council's selective policies. Perhaps it is time for change. Voss didn't allow himself to smile just yet, but the shift was unmistakable. The Council's absolute authority had cracked. Zaltor's image remained on screen, but the Chancellor no longer seemed as assured. He turned away, speaking in rapid, hushed tones to unseen advisors. Voss let him have his moment. Then, the Chancellor faced him again. His voice was tight. We will convene an emergency session. Voss inclined his head. You do that. We'll be here. The transmission cut. The bridge remained silent for a moment before Iwata spoke. You just forced their hand. Voss exhaled. They forced mine first. Still, she said, glancing at the data feed of shifting council votes. We're not alone in this anymore. No, they weren't. And that changed everything. Voss turned toward the main display, where the station hung beneath them like an aging throne. The game had shifted. Now it was humanity's turn to make the rules. The emergency session convened in record time. The Council's Grand Chamber, usually a place of slow deliberation and procedural delays, now buzzed with urgency. Delegates from every major species filled their seats, their voices a low hum of speculation. At the center of it all, High Chancellor Zaltor stood rigid, his hands clasped behind his back. His usual air of authority had dulled, replaced with something sharper, calculation, frustration, and a trace of something he would never admit. Uncertainty. On the chamber's central projection, the UNS Ironclad loomed above the station like a steel behemoth. Its presence was not just a message. It was a challenge. The assembled leaders fell silent as Zaltor raised a hand. His gaze swept over them before he spoke. "This council was founded to maintain stability," he began, his voice resonating through the vast hall. "To ensure that war, chaos, and reckless ambition never again consume the galaxy." His eyes flicked toward the human delegation. "But today, that stability is threatened. Not by outside forces, not by an enemy invasion, but by a species that refuses to recognize its place." Captain Elias Voss sat at the human representatives' table, his expression unreadable. He leaned back slightly, allowing the Chancellor to finish his grand speech before making his move. "We offered them a path forward," Zaltor continued. "A way to integrate, to be part of something greater. They refused. Instead, they arrive in force, bringing warships to a place of peace, demanding terms like conquerors. If this is allowed, what precedent does it set? If they defy us without consequence, what happens when others follow?" Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Some nodded in agreement, but others exchanged uneasy glances. The cracks in the council's authority were widening. Voss took that as his cue. He stood, smoothing his uniform before stepping toward the speaker's platform. The chamber dimmed slightly, signaling that the floor was his. His voice was steady when he spoke. "We didn't come here to start a war," he said plainly. "We came here because you left us no choice." A sharp intake of breath swept through the chamber. Zaltor's jaw tightened. Voss pressed on. "For decades, humanity has expanded, not through conquest, not through force, but through ambition, innovation, and sheer will. And every step of the way, we've been met with restrictions. Regulations designed to slow us down. Treaties meant to keep us in our place." He let his words settle before continuing. "And now, because we won't kneel, you demand we disarm, stop our research, and beg for permission to exist?" His eyes locked onto Zaltor's. "No." A silence stretched, thick with tension. Then, a new voice spoke. "We agree." The room turned as Representative Kaltor of the Valari Dominion stood. His species had been one of the younger members of the Council, their rapid expansion often hindered by the same rules imposed on humanity. "This Council claims to protect peace," Kaltor continued, his voice measured. "Yet in reality, it protects stagnation. It preserves power for those who already have it. Humanity is not the first species to challenge this, nor will they be the last." Zaltor's fingers curled into fists. "You would take their side?" Kaltor's gaze didn't waver. "I take the side of progress." A flicker of movement to the right. Commander Genval of the Taraxi Republic, one of the oldest civilizations present, rose as well. "We have watched humanity closely," she said. "Their methods are bold, sometimes reckless. But tell me, Chancellor, have they ever attacked without provocation? Have they ever subjugated another race? No. And yet, we threaten them with sanctions and war as if they have committed crimes." More murmurs. Some nods of agreement. The chamber was shifting. Zaltor saw it too, and he moved to reassert control. "You are being blinded by their aggression. Do you truly not see where this leads? If we allow them to dictate terms, then the authority of this council is meaningless. Our unity fractures, and war becomes inevitable." Voss let out a short breath, shaking his head. "That's where you're wrong, Chancellor. Unity isn't enforced through threats. It's built through respect." He let the words hang before delivering the final blow. "You wanted us to disarm. Instead, you've united the very species you sought to divide." A silence fell over the chamber, deeper than before. Then, one by one, the voting panels illuminated. Some in favor of the Chancellor's stance, but many, far more than before, against. The council was no longer unanimous. Zaltor stared at the results, the weight of them pressing down on him. For the first time in centuries, the council's absolute rule had been challenged. And it had not held. Finally he spoke, his voice controlled but edged with something bitter. "We will reconsider our position," he said carefully. "But understand this, Captain, Humanity has forced a change here today. That does not mean you will always like the outcome. Voss gave him a small, knowing smile. We're prepared for that. With that, the session adjourned. As Voss turned to leave, Iwata fell into step beside him. That went better than expected. He let out a dry chuckle. Depends on who you ask. They won't forget this, she said. Good, Voss replied. Neither will we. Above them, the ironclad remained in orbit, its shadow stretching over the station like a promise. A promise that humanity would not be silenced. The Council's emergency session had ended, but the true battle had only just begun. Captain Elias Voss sat in the command chair of the UNS Ironclad, staring at the holographic feed of the Galactic Council's capital station. It was still there, still radiating its ancient authority, but something fundamental had changed. The illusion of its absolute control had cracked, and humanity had been the one to strike the blow. Status? He asked. Commander Rachel Iwata's voice was steady. Council warships maintaining distance. No aggressive moves. Scans indicate their fleet remains on standby, but they're watching us closely. Voss smirked. Let them watch. The door to the bridge hissed open. Ambassador Julian Carter strode in, his sharp features unreadable. He had spent the last few hours in high-level negotiations following the Council's forced re-evaluation. Now, he had results. Voss turned to him. Well, Carter exhaled. They blinked. Iwata arched an eyebrow. Define blinked. The ambassador tapped his datapad, pulling up a classified message. The Council has rescinded its immediate demand for humanity's disarmament. Sanctions are off the table. Instead, they want a strategic review of our place in galactic affairs. In other words, they're stalling, hoping to buy time. Voss nodded slowly. Typical bureaucracy. Delay, delay, and hope the problem solves itself. Carter's expression darkened. There's more. The Chancellor is furious. He's already pushing for alternative measures, covert operations, economic pressures, anything that can keep humanity in check without an outright war. Iwata folded her arms. So they still want to control us. They're just trying to be subtle about it. Exactly, Carter said. But the real shift isn't in the Council itself. It's in the cracks forming within it. The Valari Dominion and Taraxi Republic openly opposed Zaltor's stance. Other factions are reconsidering their loyalties. For the first time in centuries, the Council isn't united. Voss leaned back, absorbing the implications. That means we have an opening. Carter nodded. A small one. But it's there. We've proven that humanity won't be bullied. Now, we have to decide our next move. Silence settled over the bridge as the weight of that decision loomed. Then, Iwata spoke. Do we press forward? She asked. Expand while they're still divided? Carter hesitated. That's one option. But it risks escalation. Right now, the Council is trying to recover. If we push too hard, we could force them back together. Voss considered it. Then we don't push, we lead. If other species see us as an alternative to the Council's stagnant rule, they'll come to us. We don't need to conquer. We just need to be better. Carter gave a slow, approving nod. That might be the smartest approach. Show them a different way. An alliance based on mutual benefit, not fear. A chime interrupted their discussion. Incoming transmission, the comms officer reported. Chancellor Zaltor. Voss exhaled. Let's hear what he has to say. The display flickered, revealing the Chancellor's composed but rigid expression. His authority was still intact, but the confidence behind it had frayed. Captain Voss, Zaltor said coolly. Ambassador Carter. Chancellor, Carter greeted evenly. I assume this isn't a social call. Zaltor's lips thinned. No. This is a final warning. You have made powerful enemies today. Your defiance will not be forgotten. The Council's patience is not limitless. Voss leaned forward slightly. Neither is ours. A flicker of irritation crossed Zaltor's face. You believe you've won something here, that you have changed the order of things. But the balance of power does not shift so easily. Carter smiled. No, Chancellor, it doesn't. But it has begun. Another silence. Then, Zaltor exhaled slowly, regaining his composure. Your actions have forced reconsideration. The Council will deliberate further. But do not mistake this for an invitation to run unchecked. Noted, Voss said. And do not mistake our patience for weakness. The transmission cut. For a long moment, no one spoke. Finally, Iwata let out a low whistle. I don't think he's used to people talking to him like that. Carter chuckled. He'll have to get used to it. Voss exhaled, glancing back at the view screen, where the station floated against the backdrop of space. The battle had been fought with words, not weapons. And humanity had emerged standing. But this was only the beginning. We set course for Sol, he ordered. Time to plan the next step. The ironclad's engines flared to life, and the ship turned, leaving the Council behind. A new future awaited. One humanity would shape on its own terms.